Okay, welcome to the 85th episode of the Henry George Daily Devotional. We continue with this subsection of going through the canons of taxation, um, and we are evaluating the proposition of the single land value tax. Or I guess not really. No, we're not really talking about that yet. We're just talking about the things we desire from a tax. Anyway, it occurred to me that I ought to uh, cross. What's the word? I don't know. But I am hosting a in-person Georgist meetup in Los Angeles, or in the area of Los Angeles in San Pedro at Brewery West on the 27th of July. I guess I will put the link in the description. Um, and I guess I also blog about Georgism, which I don't ever mention here. I just kind of figure everyone who watches these comes from my the Georgism Discord server or my blog or is just a friend of mine, so they would have heard of these things, but I might be wrong about that. I don't know who you are. So if there's a chance you live in LA, or if you don't know about my blog, or if you don't know about the George's Discord server, or you want to get involved with the Georgist organizations at least in the USA, like Common Ground or the Henry George School of Social Sciences, I guess I will link to those um, in my blog is almostinfinite.substack.com. And the Georgism Discord server, I mean, it's just called Georgism, but I don't know what the link is. I'd have to post an invite. Anyway, we will get back to reading um, Progress and Poverty now. George writes, but all other monopolies are trivial in extent as compared with the monopoly of land. I don't remember exactly what the other monopolies he was talking about were. Patent and copyrights, those kinds of monopolies. And the origin of patents was just a government granted monopoly on a particular industry. Like, hey, you're going to be the textile producer for the king, something like that. All right, so land monopolies are the worst. And the value of land expressing a monopoly, pure and simple, is in every respect fitted for taxation. That is to say, while the value of a railroad or a telegraph line, the price of gas, or of a patent medicine, may express the price of monopoly, it also expresses the exertion of labor and capital. But the value of land, or economic rent, uh, which this is like the value of land, yeah, is economic rent, as we have seen, is in no part made up from these factors and express nothing but the advantage of appropriation. Uh, Slight nitpick, the value of that land is a product of the labor of the whole society. It's just not at all related to the owners. If we have land ownership, if there is a landlord, it is not at all related to the labor of the owner, if they labor at all. But the value doesn't come from nothing. The value, the value of land doesn't just go up uh, in a vacuum. It goes up because of the labor of the society. Some people have asked about, you know, is a universal basic income or citizens dividend, which is the returning of that land value rents to all of the society, should it be portioned out based on who contributed the most? Um, and that's sometimes interesting to think about. I think that is a very difficult practical thing to do to even determine who contributed the most to the value of a society. Um, it's kind of interesting. Anyway, taxes levied upon the value of land cannot check production in the slightest degree until they exceed rent or the value of land taken annually, for unlike taxes upon commodities or exchange or capital or any of the tools or processes of production, they do not bear upon production. The value of land does not express the reward of production, as does the value of crops, of cattle, of buildings, or any of the things which are styled personal property and improvements. It expresses the exchange value of monopoly. Yes, land is unique compared to, well, it is unique. It is not in any case the creation of the individual who owns land. The land value is not in any case the creation of the individual who owns the land, at least not necessarily. Currently, I would say a lot of home owning landlords who, and by landlord in this sense, I mean they're living in their own home and they have, like you could say, imputed economic rent that they gain from. They frequently also are creating value, just like landlords also create some value if they act as a property manager. Um, and I just don't want to totally ignore that. It is created by the growth of the community. Yeah, I guess a simpler way would just to be saying that if the landlord is an active participant in the community, they are, at least in some small part, creating the value of their land. Hence, the community can take it all without in any way lessening the incentive to improvement or in the slightest degree lessening the production of wealth. Taxes may be imposed upon the value of land until all rent is taken by the state, without reducing the wages of labor or the reward of capital one iota, without increasing the price of a single commodity or making production in any way more difficult. But more than this, taxes on the value of land not only do not check production, as do most other taxes, but they tend to increase production by destroying speculative rent. How speculative rent checks production may be seen not only in the valuable land withheld from use, but in the paroxysms of industrial depression, which, originating in the speculative advance in land values, propagate themselves over the whole civilized world, everywhere paralyzing industry and causing more waste and probably more suffering than would a general war. Um, this is, I read this somewhat, cavalierly, but I think this is a devastating truth. This is why I care so much about Georgism, because I believe this sentence. Speculative rent, monopoly over land, it checks production. It may be seen not only in the valuable land that's withheld from use, like we talk about the landlords who get rich off of rent because they're collecting this wealth produced. Um, but the whole size of the pie is also reduced by their collecting that rent. Well, by the speculation that so often that is prevalent everywhere. Like there are landlords who are putting their land to the highest use, and then production is continuing, and then they are collecting the rent off of that. Although when laborers know they're not going to receive the full value of their wages, I suspect they do not work as optimally. Like we're just it would unlock a so much more production and progress that it, like, part of me wants to say all these landlords, like a lot of them, they wouldn't relatively be as wealthy, but objectively, I feel like if we had had Georgism starting in George's time, we would all be so rich right now. And I'm not like here to be like, hey, let's all get rich. But I am here to be like, hey, let's all get rid of poor people, or well, not the people. Let's get rid of the poorness. We can solve poverty and world hunger. Like we can. We know the way. So back to rereading the sentence. Speculative rent. It checks production, may be seen not only in the valuable land withheld from use, but in the paroxysms of industrial depression. This just means in the boom and bust cycle, originating in the speculative advance in land values. They propagate themselves. That means they expand over time and space, over the whole civilized world, and reproducing, sort of. Everywhere paralyzing industry and causing more waste and probably more suffering than would a general war. Yeah, yeah. It's always funny, like sometimes I conceive of war like in a video game that I play, where when I lose, you know, all of my buildings and all of my army men are killed. But generally speaking, a society, a side surrenders when their casualties are at a certain level. And most of the time in war, you're not, you know, eviscerated completely. Um, anyway, taxation, which would take rent for public uses, would prevent all this. While if land were taxed to anything near its rental value, no one could afford to hold land that he was not using, and consequently, because it would only be taxed if somebody else could use it well, or on average, other people could use it well. So if he's not using it well, he would not be able to afford the land he's not using, and consequently, land not in use would be thrown open to those who would use it. Settlement would be closer, and consequently, labor and capital would be enabled to produce much more with the same exertion. We wouldn't sprawl, is what he means by settlement would be closer. The dog in the manger, who in this country especially so wastes productive power, would be choked off. The dog in the manger is the land speculator. There is yet an even more important way by which, through its effect upon distribution, the taking of rent to public uses by taxation would stimulate the production of wealth. Yeah, this is what I was talking about. But reference to that may be reserved. George is more patient than I am. It is sufficiently evident that with regard to production, the tax upon the value of land is the best tax that can be imposed. Tax manufacturers, and the effect is to check manufacturing. Tax improvements, and the effect is to lessen improvement. Tax commerce, and the effect is to prevent exchange. Tax capital, and the effect is to drive it away. But the whole value of land may be taken in taxation, and the only effect will be to stimulate industry, to open new opportunities to capital, and to increase the production of wealth. And so we finish section 1. Uh, if you want the fancy term for how when you tax manufacturers and you lose manufacturing, or improvements and you lose improvements, or commerce and you lose exchange, is called deadweight loss. So if you ever hear that term, that's what you can think about. If you tax something that has the term like an elastic supply, meaning more or less of it can be made. So you tax, cigarettes. Well, less cigarettes will be made than the people want. Well, than some people want. If you tax, let's not do something most people agree that they don't like. If you tax apples, fewer apples will be made, and their price will sort of go back to where it was, or higher, depending, and less people will get to enjoy apples. But if you tax land, there is just as much land available. No deadweight loss. Let's see. Oh, this one's short, so we'll do it. Section 2. As to the ease and cheapness of collection, with perhaps the exception of certain licenses and stamp duties which may be made almost to collect themselves, but which can be relied on for only a trivial amount of revenue. I don't know historically exactly what he means. Sometimes I get confused with stamp duties. Like sometimes that means a certain kind of approval when selling property, and then sometimes it means like literally stamps when you're mailing a letter, a physical letter. Um, yeah. Uh, and he's saying this is just a trivial amount of revenue. Um, I guess so. I don't know. I thought that you know, the OGT party was about like stamps and tea taxes, but I guess that's different, but I don't know. A tax upon land values can, of all taxes, be most easily and cheaply collected, for land cannot be hidden or carried off. Its value can be readily ascertained, and the assessment once made, nothing but a receiver is required for collection. It's funny, he's talking about this well before we ever had the Cayman Islands or Swiss bank accounts. And as under all fiscal systems, some part of the public revenues is collected from taxes on land. And yeah, a lot of people I don't think are just that sold on the idea of this, though, that its value can be easily ascertained. The assessment once made, nothing but a receiver is required for collection. I mean, this part kind of people agree on. Like, if a piece of land is, if we all agree that the tax for it should be X amount, then it's pretty easy to just await the check. But I wonder what he's contrasting that to, because I feel like once any tax assessment is done, you just await the check from to collect it. Well, I guess the argument I always hear and do make myself, which is if there's a piece of land and someone doesn't pay, I just go to that piece of land and I'm like, all right, we're putting this up for sale because the owner did not pay the proper rent. Um, that's the way yeah, I guess a receipt, I guess that's what I would say. That when somebody doesn't pay, it's very easy to go collect it in a sense by just claiming the land back and then you would auction it. And then he says that value can be readily ascertained. A lot of people do not believe this in their articles and stuff. I think it could be easily ascertained. We already spend a lot of time and effort doing other kinds of property assessment for other property taxes. Although, like the California system is just based off of the last sale value, unless you do a major renovation. So then, in cases of major renovations, there has to be a new assessment, something like that. I don't know what triggers a major or what's considered a major renovation. I don't know. Like, sure seems like you could get around that by doing a sequence of minor renovations. I don't know. Wait, am I? Huh. I guess I think I am recording, but my live stream doesn't seem to be. No, this says 2 of 2 active. Oh, okay. I don't know. The OBS dashboard was acting weird. Anyway, we will continue with George. And as under all fiscal systems, some part of the public revenues is collected from taxes on land, and the machinery for that purpose already exists, and could as well be made to collect all as a part. The costs of collecting the revenue now obtained by other taxes might be entirely saved by substituting the tax on land values for all other taxes. What an enormous saving might thus be made can be inferred from the horde of officials now engaged in collecting taxes. Yeah, and if you thought that you were dealing with a horde of officials engaged in collecting taxes, George, we're dealing with a horde of hordes these days. This saving would largely reduce, and there's also the accompanying whole industry of filing taxes or helping you avoid paying taxes. That is just not at all a valuable industry. Excuse me. This saving would largely reduce the difference between what taxation now costs the people and what it yields. But the substitution of a tax on land values for all other taxes would operate to reduce this difference in an even more important way. A tax on land values does not add to prices and is thus paid directly by the person on whom it falls. All right, there's a lot of pushback about can't the land value tax just be passed on to renters? And I do not think so. All economists agree it cannot be passed on. The idea behind this is that the price people are willing to pay for rent is a market determined value, and you would assume people renting out their homes are already uh, sensitive to what renters are willing to pay, and it isn't really at all a factor of whether or not that landlord's margin is large or small. If somebody owns their house and owns a house and is renting it out, or if they have a huge mortgage on it and they're renting it out, and suppose these two landlords have identical houses they're renting out, one can pocket the full amount of rent from their renter, and the other has to spend that full amount paying off their mortgage, right? Yet they still rent their houses for the same amount. And so if both landlords suddenly had to uh, pay an extra kind of tax, it's not like that affects what a renter would be willing to pay to rent. If all landlords everywhere tried to raise their tax, if all landlords everywhere tried to raise their rent, there is a fair amount of flexibility on the side of the renters. They can get roommates, they can stay with parents, and there also is just like the idea of all landlords everywhere colluding is I can't really believe it. All right, George continues. Um, Whereas all taxes upon things of unfixed quantity increase prices, and in the course of exchange are shifted from seller to buyer, increasing as they go. If we impose a tax upon money loaned, as has been often attempted, the lender will charge the tax to the borrower, and the borrower must pay it or not obtain the loan. If the borrower uses it in his business, he in his turn must get back the tax from his customers, or his business becomes unprofitable. I feel like in a lot of these cases, it's like I think economists sort of agree that some of these taxes are paid slightly by the proprietor and slightly by the consumer. It like can't be fully passed on. I don't know. If we impose a tax upon buildings, the users of buildings must finally pay it, for the erection of buildings will cease until building rents become high enough to pay the regular profit and the tax besides. If we impose a tax upon manufacturers or imported goods, the manufacturer or importer will charge it in a higher price to the jobber to the retailer, and the retailer to the consumer. I don't know what a jobber is. Somebody in the chain, supply chain, I guess. Now, the consumer on whom the tax thus ultimately falls must not only pay the amount of the tax, but also a profit on this amount to everyone who has thus advanced it. Like, typically you'd think when you put a tax on a thing and it basically raises its cost, the consumers will just probably buy a little bit less of that, right? If there's a tax on milk and milk goes up, well, maybe they're not going to buy quite as much milk, so they're going to buy some more yogurt instead. And so maybe the person who sells the milk is willing to take slightly less of a profit margin. I don't know. Okay. Now, the consumer on whom the tax thus ultimately falls must not only pay the amount of the tax, but also a profit on this amount to everyone who has thus advanced it. For profit on the capital he has advanced in paying taxes is as much required by each dealer as profit on the capital he has advanced in paying for goods. Manila cigars cost, when bought of the importer in San Francisco, 70 a thousand, of which 14 is the cost of the cigars laid down in this port, and 56 is the customs duty. But the dealer who purchases these cigars to sell again must charge a profit, not only 14, the real cost of the cigars, but on these 70, the cost of the cigars plus the duty. In this way, all taxes which add to prices are shifted from hand to hand, increasing as they go, until they ultimately rest upon consumers, who thus pay much more than is received by the government. Now, the way taxes raise price is by increasing the cost of production and checking supply. But land is not a thing of human production, and taxes upon rent cannot check supply. Therefore, though a tax on rent compels the landowners to pay more, it gives them no power to obtain more for the use of their land, as it in no way tends to reduce the supply of land. On the contrary, by compelling those who hold land on speculation to sell or let for what they can get, a tax on land values tends to increase the competition between owners and thus to reduce the price of land. Thus, in all respects, a tax upon land values is the cheapest tax by which a large revenue can be raised, giving to the government the largest net revenue in proportion to the amount taken from the people. I don't know. That concludes section 2. Um, that's not what I'm looking for. All taxes come out of rents. So I guess this term wasn't coined until 2009. Mason Gaffney was a Georgist economist, or is he still living? I'm not sure. And so this idea of all taxes come out of rent. Um, the idea is generally mentioned, for example. It's generally rejected in mainstream, for example, which shows that, in fact, even tax on pure land rents can be shifted onto other, which implies all. Oh, so here's the classic example of unshiftable tax is a general tax on pure rental. Since Ricardo comes with the annual net income and its price calculated, this paper shows its conclusions are false. Well. Maybe maybe it's all wrong. All right, but this concludes today's. Yes, as soon as I'm challenged in my beliefs, I'm ending the video. Leave a comment to tell me how uh, intellectually compromised I am. Bye bye. What do I think of the term equitism? Wealth and riches are more evenly distributed among the city's inhabitants. This ensures Tolosa. Sure. As a political and social economic approach, the idea that society should ensure the equitable rights and opportunities for all people in the city of Tolosa, so they made up the term. A proposed utopian city that aims to redefine the city's but combines Athens. Let's learn a little more about Tolosa. It's been a bit. Oh, it explicitly says progress and poverty right there. What? I didn't know Tolosa did that. Whoa. And how come? I mean, I don't like the aesthetics of like a board and billionaires or whatever, but mm, I'm skeptical of people who need to come up new terms. I am skeptical of. I ride my bicycle and I don't go too far. HGDD 85 of what are we? Book 8, Chapter 4, Section 1-2. Oh, this is only Chapter 3. Okay, fine. I guess this will be the link we put. As to ease and cheapness of collection. Land tax is easy and cheap. Yeah. And Atlas. Um, we finished section 1, which is long. George says A, that a land value tax cannot be passed on because land it is fixed in supply, and that B, it's easy to collect because we know where the land is, and C, it's easy to assess the value since we basically already do it and already spent a ton of resources on other tax collection efforts which could be got rid of. Um, Special Georgist links to get you connected to the coolest Georgists on the internet. In the land. Georgism Discord. Um, Common Ground. USA. Georgist. Org. My blog. Los Angeles. Meetup. Philadelphia. meet up. Uh, we'll look up that one in a second. Commonwealth, what am I doing? Common ground. Where is my... Oh, it's right here. Alright. Bum 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 dun 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 dun. Los Angeles. Bum 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 bum. What does this one take me to? Another Eventbrite one? Yes. And now the Philadelphia meetup. Which, who can remember where that was posted? Um, Here. Where? I keep forgetting. I'm doing them here. Um, July 30th. Okay. New episode. Not a new attitude. Oh yeah, this is episode 85, I think. Yeah. Whoops. Go back. Go back. What the hell? What is going on? Next. '85. Publish. Wow. I guess I should check for comments. It's just funny to me that I don't get an email when I get comments on my videos. Well, why I thought I've liked all of these. Only addresses the enough part of enough and as good. Uh, not problem of the hmm, I don't even. Let's look into this. YouTube videos. 8080. Ooh, looks like I did do it twice. Do I do the one with 2 comments or the one with 2 views? And this one looks like it came second. I suppose that with the advent of the word processor, overall efficiency practices are improved and use land as private ownership of land residuals means increase in privatized land rents, increase the land gentry who live from one loophole. Ah. Private. Oh, this is not from Janning. Wait. In my opinion, any tax upon land is a form of rent to government and should be abolished. The government should exist by merit of the people and serve the citizenry. State ownership of land places right to own or hold land under pressure to maintain favor with the state, and if land rent is pushed high enough by the state, could become subject to monetary caste systems. It's a very devious idea to be held in contemplation by any serious mind. Um, alright, alright. So, everything, everything above. What do we make of the vast number of people? 40% of Americans who are renters. They just do not have freedom and never will. Um, what? Oh, I forget I'm still streaming. Hello, stream. I don't think anyone's watching. It's so exciting to have someone to argue with a little bit. I do not strive to be a serious mind, and I'm very open to devious ideas. I got no. Um, hope I got this right. And this was July 30th. Yeah. All right, now we're going to talk to Janning. Um, Oh, I don't know why I'm streaming.